What was God's response to Elijah's claim of being the only faithful person left in Israel? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Kings on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 11 to 21. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Kings chapter 19, beginning at verse 11. Then he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains, and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice. So it was, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' And he said, 'I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek to take my life.' Then the Lord said to him, 'Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, appoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also you shall anoint Jehu the son of Nimshi as king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah you shall anoint as prophet in your place. It shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him.' So he departed from there, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he was with the 12th. Then Elijah passed by him and threw his mantle on him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, 'Please let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you.' And he said to him, 'Go back again, for what have I done to you?' So Elisha turned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slaughtered them and boiled their flesh using the oxen's equipment and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and became his servant." In chapter 18, we saw Elijah score what seemed to be a mighty victory over the prophets of Baal, in that their failure to call down fire from heaven by the name of Baal, and Elijah's success in doing so in the name of Jehovah, had shown these prophets of Baal to be false prophets, which led to their execution. Elijah saw this as a victory, because certainly now Israel would turn away from their idolatry and return to worshiping God. But such wasn't the case for the vast majority of them, including Ahab and Jezebel. In fact, Jezebel was so angry that she threatened the life of Elijah, causing him to flee. In the last lesson, we had Elijah fleeing to Beersheba in southern Judah, and then told to go to Mount Sinai, which of course Elijah did. It is here at Mount Sinai, where the great prophet of Israel, Moses, stood, that the Lord would appear to Elijah, though not in physical form. He first appeared to Elijah in a vision, asking Elijah what he was doing there, a question of reproof, not inquiry. Elijah told the voice that he had been very zealous for the Lord in spite of Israel breaking his covenants, and that he alone was left serving the Lord, and they, meaning Israel, sought his life in order to take it. Now the Lord could have simply answered Elijah here, but he didn't do that. He wanted to demonstrate to Elijah not only who he is, but who he is not. The voice told him to go and stand on the mountain before the Lord. It is said that the Lord passed by, however, not in the physical phenomena that followed, for he was not in the great and strong wind that tore into the mountain. He was not in the earthquake, nor was he in the fire. Following all these, though, a still small voice came to Elijah, causing Elijah to wrap his face in his mantle and go to the entrance of the cave. This was the Lord calling him to talk to him. Now why did the Lord make this demonstration? Because Elijah was a mighty prophet who thought that because he did great big things, the people would see that this was from the Lord and would turn away from their idolatry. But God was not in those great big things. Sure, fire came down from heaven, exhibiting God's power, But the fire was not the Lord himself. And that great demonstration of God's power wouldn't transform the heart of the hard-hearted who didn't want to be turned. In order to turn men's hearts, God didn't need those grand shows of power. He could do so simply by his word, softly given to his people, words that are able to cut through a hard heart, if that heart will but listen. Elijah needed to heed this lesson if he was going to be effective going forward. In the immediate term, though, Elijah didn't fully understand, for when asked again what Elijah was doing there, Elijah gave the same answer as before, that he worked mighty things for God, yet he alone was left faithful in Israel, and they sought to kill him. God, however, showed Elijah that this was not true. He was not alone in Israel, for there were yet 7,000 who had not yet bowed the knee to Baal. Whether this 7,000 is a literal estimate or a symbolic number meant to represent that there was a complete number of people in Israel who remained faithful is really immaterial. For the point is, Elijah was wrong. He was not alone. And although it was true that some in Israel sought his life, not everybody did, meaning his work was not done. He was told to go and anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, Jehu the son of Nimshi, which is a different prophet than the Jehu we met back in 1 Kings 16, to be king of Israel, and Elisha to be the next prophet of Israel who would succeed him. No time frame is given by God for this task, and so we're only going to see Elijah complete one of these tasks before he is taken to heaven by God, with Elisha continuing Elijah's work, completing the other two. Accepting his reproof by God, Elijah departed Mount Sinai and found Elisha in a field plowing with 12 oxen. Throwing his mantle over Elisha was representative of him selecting Elisha to be prophet, something Elisha understood. However, Elisha wanted to bid farewell to his parents before following Elijah, something Elijah allowed as long as he didn't forget his calling. And so it was, after a going-away party was thrown for Elisha, in which a yoke of oxen was slaughtered for the people to eat, that Elisha went and followed Elijah and became his servant. We're going to need to remember this man, for we will not read of him again until 2 Kings. But suffice it to say, he was present from here on out with Elijah, though unnamed. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 20, verses 1 to 15, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.